Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to BiblioTech On Air. I'm Rosanna.
I'm Ruby.
I'm Israel.
And today we have a very special guest with us. We have Olivia Escovedo, branch manager here at BiblioTech EDU. And today we're going to be focusing on her path through librarianship, her education, a little bit of a deep dive into the requirements and what it took for her to be where she's at pretty much right now.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for joining us, Olivia.
Thanks for having me.
To get us started, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background that led you to come work as BiblioTech EDU's branch manager.
Sure. I'm originally from Corpus Christi, and I moved to San Antonio about 10 years ago to start my first teaching job, and I worked for SAIC, so I moved here for that. Ever since I was in high school, I wanted to be a teacher. I knew that was kind of the track I wanted to take. And so I went to Texas A&M to study bilingual education.
Cool.
So my mom's from Mexico. So I grew up speaking Spanish at home. And so I was like, well, it's a good fit. So I went to study that at A&M. But when I started doing my student teaching in an elementary school classroom, I realized it's probably not for me. And it's
Fair.
probably a good time, that I learned that, before I decided to become an elementary school teacher. And so I was like, everybody kind of has that crisis of what am I supposed to do with my life?
Yeah.
And so what I did is I moved to New York. I was like,
That's a switch
That's
up.
a big
move. From Texas to New York, huh?
right? My older brother used to work for Teacher America in New York, and he always said it's a good idea to live in New York because you get, a mix of all these different cultures and people.
It's a
And
big
so I was
melting
like,
pot up there.
Yeah, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so I sold everything and moved to New York. Only knew one person.
Wow.
And I moved to New York, became a live-in nanny for a little while for a family that one friend knew.
Mm-hmm.
She put me in contact with them, and so I became a live-in nanny. And after that, I was like, okay, I never get to see New York, so let me just... I wanted to do something else. And then I saw that there was an opening for Apple. And so I decided to go work for Apple. So I helped to open the first Grand Central store.
Whoa.
Yeah, for Apple inside of Grand Central Station. So that was really neat. That's where I fell in love with Apple products, which is great because BiblioTech works with a lot of Apple products. And then I was there for about a year, and then I moved back to Corpus Christi to get my master's in education because I was like, you know what, maybe elementary is not where I'm supposed to be. Maybe it's high school. And so I went back to get my degree in education and curriculum instruction with a focus on English because I was like, I'll be an English teacher. So that's what I did. So when I finished that, I moved to San Antonio to start teaching for SAISD at Burbank High School.
Yeah, what grade?
I taught 9th and 10th grade. And since I had a master's in education, they wanted me to teach the upper level English classes. I came in the middle of the year, which...
Oh, there we go.
Dang.
I mean,
She's
I
a
was
brave
so
soul.
I was eager. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I want a job, so there was an opening, and I learned later probably not the best time to start teaching in the middle of the year, taking over for another teacher, but it was part of my journey. So did that. The first year I taught, I taught upper level English, and then the second year they're like, oh, you have ESL certification. They're like, oh, okay, so you can teach the ESL classes. And so the following year, I taught another totally different subject and taught ESL. So, so I did that for about there at Burbank for 1 year. And then I transferred to Northside and then taught ESL over there. So I did that for another year. And then I was like, education's probably, after being there already for almost 3 years in education, I was like, it's time to try something different. And I spoke to somebody about it, and she was getting her school librarian certificate. And I was like, you know what? Why not be a librarian?
Yeah.
I love to read, and I love working with children, obviously, because I went to be an elementary school teacher. So it ended up being a good fit for me and switching to that.
Nice. And now here you are.
Stuff.
From Texas to New York to Texas.
Yeah. How old were you when you moved to New York?
I was 24 years old.
Wow.
No, wait, sorry, 23 years old when I moved to New York.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I've always loved
Yeah.
adventure, loved traveling, loved
You don't say.
experiences. So I was like, it'll be a new experience, and I love New York. I mean, I still go back
Cool.
like once a year.
For our next question, so tell us what it was like to transition from working for SAPL to BiblioTech.
Yeah, so I worked when I got my degree. I was looking for a job. When I got my degree originally, I wanted to be an academic librarian. Because I had already been in the classroom. I was like, I have a master's, so I wanted to be a subject librarian. So I was like, but all those jobs in the community college or universities, they all want you to have 1 year of experience. How are you supposed to get 1 year of experience if they won't hire you right out of getting your MLS? And so for that reason, I found a job in the public library to get experience at Apple. Originally, I did not want to be a public librarian. But when I got there, I loved it. So I loved doing programs and working with kids. Transitioning, I love the physical books, especially when you're doing programs. I think it's great to show kids pictures and stuff, and sometimes it's a little harder on the iPad, but I love doing both. I love the digital and I like the physical. In my personal life, though, I use mostly audiobooks. So, I mean, it wasn't really much of a transition for me because I use a lot of the digital already in my personal life. And so both organizations are great. Both have great features. Things that they offer. It's great to give the public a lot of options. Transitioning wasn't as hard as I thought it would be.
Good.
So.
All right, so we're going to jump into a few more specific librarian questions. So where did you get your education, or where did you go to school, and when did you realize that you wanted to become a librarian, which you kind of did touch on a bit earlier?
Yeah, I got my undergrad from Texas A&M University in College Station, Giga Maggies.
Careful, we have a UT person in here.
Right? And then I got my first master's from A&M Corpus Christi in curriculum and instruction with a focus on English because you take classes in the area that you want to teach in. And so I wanted to focus on English. So I have a master's level credit hours in English. And then I decided to become a librarian after speaking to another teacher who was, deciding to switch to being a school librarian. And that's kind of when I thought, I'm ready to leave education, but I don't know what's next. And just like almost how it went with when I went to New York, it was like from one day to the next, a light bulb came on. I was like, you know what? I'm going to become a librarian. And even there's always people who are skeptical. And my husband was like, are you sure that's a good, fit? Like, you're going to take a cut in pay from being an educator to becoming a librarian? Aren't like a lot of people say, aren't libraries going out of style? And people are hesitant sometimes to make those switches. But, I wanted to enjoy my job because, sometimes being in the classroom, you get burned out. So I wanted to find something that I knew I was going to enjoy. And that's one of my primary reasons for switching to become a librarian.
Nice. So at the time you were looking to earn your degree, were there a lot of schools that had this program available, or were your choices kind of limited?
Well, there's only 3 in Texas that are accredited for you to get your MLS. That's University of Texas at Austin. They have a program. And then there's University of North Texas. You can get your MLS from. And then Texas Women's University, which is where I went. I kind of limited myself because at the time I knew I was going to switch. I learned, I figured that out kind of late. And University of North Texas the deadline was already passed. So I was like, all right, we're doing a Texas Women's University, which ended up being more affordable. So it was probably a better choice for me anyway. And so that's the one I ended up choosing primarily out of necessity. And it was good that it was more affordable.
Yeah. And so in applying for your MLS, so what are some of the requirements that an individual would need?
Yeah, so for Texas Women's, you need to have your undergraduate degree, and you have to have a GPA of 3.0 or above. They do still accept people though that are below 3.0, but it's like case by case basis. And then you also have to apply to the graduate school. You submit your resume, and then you also submit a statement of intent of why you want to get your librarian degree or why you want to become a librarian, and then a letter of recommendation.
Yeah, is it just one letter of recommendation?
One letter of recommendation.
Wow, that's nice. My graduate program required 3.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So was Texas Women's University, I know I heard some people say that it was strictly online. Did you do the strictly online?
It's strictly, well, I mean, I think they do offer a hybrid, but I chose to do completely online.
Yeah.
So what's that like while learning how to become a librarian and all like the, I don't know, I feel like becoming a librarian that requires a bunch of in-depth courses about how to work with the public and like, of course, how to work with the library and like, I don't know. To me, I would think it would need to be more in person and more personal. So I don't know. I can't imagine what that is like doing it online.
Well, I mean, I've done the in-person masters and I've done the online masters, and I actually preferred the online masters because it forced me to learn the material like for myself, because I had to, you know, when I didn't understand something, like I took a coding class, I watched videos and learned it for myself. So it made me learn the material for myself. Whereas like the in-person, like I could lean on others, you know? But now it's like there's nobody else here but me. Like, I have to like own my own education, and I have to really put it into practice. But I mean, we do a practicum, so we do some in-person, obviously, whenever you do a practicum in the kind of the track that you wanted to do. Like there are different tracks to do in library school. Like I said, I did the academic librarian track. There's a school librarian, there's like special libraries, medical libraries.
Wow.
There's even, I think those are all considered special libraries. And there's even a law one also.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so and the public library. Yes, there's a public library track. So I chose to do the academic library. But yeah.
Nice. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Well, I knew that there was different like specifications that you can get. I think Jesse Garcia, branch manager of BiblioTech West, he's getting his MLS, and it's in like the more IT side of librarianship.
Yes.
And we will be back after these messages.
Need something new to read? Be sure to head on over to Hoopla and check out Babel by R.F. Kuang, a historical fantasy epic that grapples with student revolutions, colonial resistance, and the use of language and translation as the dominating tool of the British Empire. Again, that is available on Hoopla. Be sure to head on over there and check out Babel today.
And now we're back.
Can you talk to us about some of the classes that you took, and what did you like or dislike about some of them?
So probably the classes I remember most are my like collection development class. You had to create a collection of over 50 items. And so since I was doing academic, I haven't, a master's in English, I love English literature. So I did 18th century British literature. And so I had to like find different, like you had to use a certain amount of books, you had to use like media, like they had the different types that we had to use, different types of formats. So that one I really enjoyed because I got to, read over some books I hadn't read over in a while. And so I did that, and I really enjoyed that class, like getting to put that together, because I knew I was going to have to do that one day anyways as a librarian. Sometimes we had to put together recommendations or lib guides, so I felt like that one was a very useful course for that. Information retrieval is an important one because a lot of times we do a lot of searches as a librarian to, find information for people. So that one was really useful, but doing it online made it a little bit harder because it was a little bit of a harder course. And I would have liked to have had the one-on-one with a professor to be able to talk to them about it. But that one made it a little bit harder to do online. So those are probably the courses I remember, probably the most is those 2 courses.
Oh,
And that's
man.
kind of like what our current collections and acquisitions librarian does, Haley, a bit.
Yeah. Wait, so you're telling me that it's not just like y'all read books and you submit summaries and that's it? That's not what the MLS is? Man, what was I thinking?
What was I thinking? I wonder if this, I don't know. I would imagine is there any courses about like dealing with the public and things like that?
You know,
It's interesting.
when I'm trying yes, I mean, we had like our intro course that kind of
Yeah.
like touches on that, but like I said, since I was doing academic libraries, it was not the track
Focus.
for public
Yeah.
libraries. And so a lot of the, you know, learning to work with the public was learned on the job.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've had a lot of new experiences this past year, too, working with that and learning how to do that. You know, it's a different when you're the manager and you
Yeah.
have to manage relationships, whereas, you know, working one-on-one with the public, it's definitely different. But no, I don't remember having like, you know, they would bring up scenarios and things like that. But, you know, like the one-on-one training,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you're a teacher too.
Yeah.
I mean, like they, you know, you go through student teaching, you have a course where you're in the classroom, but it's not until you're actually the person
Yeah.
there in
In
the moment
charge,
in
yeah.
charge
Yeah.
that it, like you learn a lot of the skills on the job.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes, you know, sometimes it's a trial by fire.
Yeah.
Right? You just get thrown in there and you figure it out as you go, and you learn what works and what doesn't. And
So this branch manager position for BiblioTech EDU was this was unique, right? Because it was a partnership. It is a partnership with SAISD, right? And so it was kind of a requirement to have like a school librarian certificate, or I'm not sure what it was
Yes.
called exactly.
yes, it's
Right?
called a school librarian
Okay,
certificate.
perfect.
Yes, I'm currently in school right now to get my school librarian certificate to learn to work with
Yeah.
the school as a librarian. So I'm currently doing that right now.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a very unique partnership working with SAISD. We have 3 different schools on the campus that we work at. We have Cass Tech, the Advanced Learning Academy, and then we have Fox Tech now, which focuses on law and medicine. So it's 3 different campuses, 3 different sets of staff that we have to work with, 3
Yeah.
different administration that we have to
Yeah.
work with, principals, assistant principals.
Oh,
It's
man.
learning all the names and, when we work with them.
It's definitely like it's its own like little city almost.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's the school system. It's a system, right? There's so many playing parts, and now you're a part of that, being the branch manager for BiblioTech EDU. You've talked to us about your past educational experiences, right? Your degrees, even your experiences as a teacher. How do you feel those equipped you for this position here at BiblioTech EDU?
Yeah, because I have been a classroom teacher before, I definitely have more understanding of teachers and students, and I have empathy for them and what they deal with in the classroom, and I want to come alongside them and say, like, how can we help you? How can we help you accomplish, projects or different things? Like we have, they come in, they do things in our recording studio.
Yeah.
Or we work on 3D printing with them. Like we do a lot of different things. We also teach students research skills too, because that's a skill, that we can also kind of help go alongside teachers and show them what we have. Like how can we show them databases and things like that, how to retrieve information for research projects and stuff like that.
I'm glad you bring that up, empathy. I feel like that can be easily overlooked, especially especially being in this position at any branch, right? Not just with students specifically, but with patrons in general. But with students specifically, they're growing. They're growing into adults, right? And if you don't have empathy for them, or if you don't take their perspective, I mean, you can't do your job effectively.
No.
You won't be able to. And so I love that you say that. I think that's a great mentality to have, and I'm glad that you bring that.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been students before in high school and middle school. It's a growing and awkward time, right? And so understanding that, and also like being a classroom teacher before, like I remember how certain subjects are difficult to understand, and so how can we come alongside them and help them, and and I'm really passionate about literacy since I was a classroom teacher, and and I I focus a lot on, bilingual books because I think that that's really important because there's, students not just with Spanish and English, but there's students that don't speak, there's so many different languages out there. And so I focused on that too a lot when I was a children's librarian. And so, I'm really passionate about that, which is why I also took it upon myself too I cleared it with our administration, of course, to be a part of the SAISD Literacy Committee, to kind of help, give, some guidance to we were developed, we were in a committee, but we are also in smaller committees within our committee to try to help with the literacy issues that we see in the classroom. So.
Yeah, and that is part of our mission as BiblioTech, promoting literacy as a recreation. And so, I mean, you're exactly doing that, in this, this literacy council that you're part of. That's great.
So, speaking of working towards your certification and your master's in library sciences, where did you get your internship hours done, and what was that like?
Sure, I did. I did mine at Texas A&M San Antonio. So since I wanted to be an academic librarian, so I originally went there, and they had never had a practicum student come there before. I was the very first one.
That's cool.
And so since I was the very first one, they really didn't know how to do it. And so it was, but I think that was a blessing in itself because I got to kind of help design my own practicum.
That's cool.
And so I sat down with the lady who was in charge there at the time, and we kind of sat down. She's like, okay, what do you want to focus on? What do you want to learn? And we were able to I was kind of able to design my own practicum.
Nice.
So that was really cool. And I told her I don't know how to do this. And so I was able to develop classes to teach, almost to be able to teach research skills. So I was able to design the instruction, but then also to kind of teach it from the point of being a librarian.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And I got to actually test it with students. So
That's awesome.
I taught it, and then they filled out questions and stuff afterwards. So that was my overall project, because you do a project at the end. So a teacher let me use her classroom as a test subject.
Nice.
So that was really cool. So I got to learn Spring Share, which is a program that you can create lit guides and tests and stuff on.
Very cool. Shout out A&M San Antonio. Shout out your supervisor.
She was great.
That's great.
And the staff there taught me a lot. And unfortunately, at the time, they didn't have any openings when I was getting ready to graduate, because I really wanted to work there. But they are a little bit of a smaller library, so they didn't have as many openings at the time.
Yeah.
When you started going to A&M, how new was it? Because Texas A&M here in San Antonio is still fairly new. So was it the first year or something, when you started going?
I'm trying to remember when A&M San Antonio opened, but I was the first practicum student, so I know
that speaks for itself.
I mean, because they had never had anybody else reach out to them, because you reach out to the school to see if they're willing to take on a practicum student.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I went to the A&M Library San Antonio, and they have your picture up, Olivia.
You're recognized.
And I did get to, do some programs there too, so that was really neat. I helped to put on their Freedom to Read programs. So that was pretty cool too, where students kind of came and read different books and stuff. So that was really cool.
And so for internship and practicum, you reach out to these locations, right? Do they interview you? Do you interview them? How does that work?
Yeah, I called her up on the phone and just said hey, I go to Texas Women's. I'm looking to do my practicum. Would you be in? Could you take on a practicum student? And we talked about it on the phone, and she asked me to kind of come in person and talk to her more about it. And that's kind of
how it went.
Yeah, that's kind of how it went.
That's cool.
So
we just experienced our first intern as well recently. Remember Renee?
Oh yeah.
For high school.
Yeah, Braulio. I think she was
undergrad.
Under Braulio as well. But yeah, that's pretty cool, and I'm glad you had such a fulfilling experience. It sounded very fulfilling.
Yeah. It really was. I really, really enjoyed it. But at the time, I thought I was gonna be an academic librarian, but there's it happens, and I decided to go the public librarian route, and now
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I can't imagine not working in the public library.
Like it just clicked into place.
Yes, it was just, yeah, I can't see doing anything else.
So I know you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but do you think that librarian education will continue to expand and grow, or do you think it is in danger of shrinking or disappearing?
Same question I got from my husband when I went to,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
be in
Librarian?
to be in library school. Yes. You know, a lot of people have that misconception that libraries are this way and they'll always be that way. But I think BiblioTech definitely shows that we are the exception to the rule, and that you don't have to come into a physical building anymore to access resources. And that's one thing I really love about BiblioTech is that, you know, I can be anywhere and listen to my audiobooks or download a book, you know, or read an ebook or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I don't see libraries going anywhere. People always need a space to come together, right? And it's great too that we have an actual physical location for that reason, because we can provide that for the community. Like they can come and do programs with us. They can find a place to meet with their friends, like we, you know, after school. So yeah, I don't see them going anywhere. They're just we're gonna have to evolve.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to change.
Yeah.
And I think BiblioTech has kind of shown that, like, we have changed. We will evolve. We will grow with the times and adapt.
What was the students' perspective like coming into this digital library? Because I know obviously we kind of mainly see adults and seeing their reactions and the way that they're acclimating to a digital library, you know, because it's something so new. But I feel like kids, it'd be a little bit more different since they've been growing around technology all their life, and to now seeing a library without books. I don't know, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I've asked that question to students, like, what is the first thing you notice when you walk in here? And they're like, oh, there's no books. I was like, exactly. Like, we're not a traditional library. I mean, there's nothing wrong with traditional libraries, but we're not a traditional library.
Yeah.
Like, we're an all digital library. And they're like, what does that mean? And so we go in. I show them the website and I talk to them about our resources and what we offer. And they're always surprised about the amount of things that we offer. And a lot of publics also is like that too. They're like, oh, I didn't know that you offered that. Like, we have so many great resources that the public can use. But yes, every time a student walks in here, they're just amazed with how it looks inside EDU, because it looks, you know, so high tech. That's always, even the public sense that when they come in, because it's just a beautiful aesthetic. It's a very nice looking library.
Definitely very nice.
All right, so to round up this interview, we're going to ask a question that we ask everyone because, again, we are BiblioTech. So what are you currently reading, watching, or listening to?
So I love to listen to audiobooks. I get through a lot of different audiobooks. I'm able to get to so many books quickly because I do them audio, and I drive a lot. So right now I'm listening to Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. It's one of her new adult fiction books that came out recently. It's about a girl named Sadie who is a portrait artist, and then she has a seizure and she finds out she has a clot in her brain, and she ends up losing the ability to see people's faces. So she has to, like, how she overcomes that. And she was like entered into a contest, and now she has to try to paint without actually being able to see the person's face. So she's like trying to develop new ways of painting. So that's kind of where I am right now in the book. She's doing a portrait right now in the book. So that's great. But it's a good series. Good book. I mean, Catherine Center is a great writer. I also love The Bodyguard, which is another one that she wrote. I have it up on our reading suggestions wall here at BiblioTech. So that's, you know, sometimes we put those up for patrons to see what we're currently reading, because it's very important as a library to be reading. Staff should be reading. And so we try to support that.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up here. Thanks again, Olivia, for joining us today on the podcast. It was great learning about, you know, your path and everything that led you to be where you are today here at BiblioTech as the manager. So thanks again for that. So signing out, I'm Rosanna.
I'm Ruby.
I'm Israel.
And thanks again. We'll catch you on the next episode.